Welcome, Rabbi Joseph. I hope you had a happy Hanukkah.
I am in the midst of. We are on the
Seven
seventh
plus.
night,
Okay. All right.
and tomorrow night, the other night, I via Zoomed my four adult children and granddaughter in America, and tomorrow night, all the family here will come on the final night. So we're getting there. The night before the last night is a night both of excitement. We're almost there, and also a night of it's almost over. So always the seventh night for me is a night of penultimacy.
Okay.
Uh,
Like the
and
letdown of the day after Christmas.
right, right, which I've never had that experience, but uh, I need the light right now. I need at
Hmm.
least the metaphor of the light right now. I noticed the YouTube of my colleague, Rabbi Angela Buckdahl, from the senior rabbi of Central Synagogue in New York, who was invited to lead the prayers at the White House Hanukkah party. She is of Asian birth. She is both an ordained cantor and
Oh.
has taken the world storm because we have services now digital. So you can go to Central Synagogue and hear her sermons and her presence. And watching her at the Hanukkah party, I closed my eyes and said, "Oh my God." We had 4 years of just Chabad and Hasidic rabbis in the former White House. Here is a woman of Asian birth. Please let us not give up pluralism. So, yes,
Well, happy Hanukkah. Um,
thank you.
I'm curious to check in with you about the UN resolution for a ceasefire and what your thoughts are about that.
Well, there was previously one in the Security Council, which was vetoed by the US, and the entire General Assembly just passed one. Enormous numbers. Humanitarian ceasefire and release all the hostages. Oops, we won't amend it to condemn Hamas. I am always curious about the nature of Israel and its relationship to the United Nations. Always curious. It was birthed at the early United Nations meeting in San Francisco.
Hmm.
That is how its identity was established. Uh, the end is coming. The United States has already made it clear um, we want an end to the violence, and whether that means before January 1st, it will be soon at hand, and then the day after and the day after can be discussed under whose leadership. It please God won't be this Netanyahu government, and lots of blame to go all around.
Hmm. Hmm.
Who will rebuild it and who will provide security? And there will still be a Hamas presence. So I wonder, when it's all done, this cycle is finished, and Hamas does it again. What will the world vote that time? I have said here, and I reaffirm the destruction of life in both the individual innocence of children and families and the physicality of buildings, institutions is horrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you stop a genocidal terrorist organization that continues, even this past week, to say, we will keep doing this? We have no desire to live alongside a Jewish state. So the violence will end soon. And then whatever Israel and the world decide in the reestablishment of trying to help these innocent Palestinian hostages. I don't think the UN, in its vote on the immediate release of all hostages, was mindful that Palestinians are hostages of Hamas, not just the 139 that were kidnapped on October 7th. So we will need to find a new set of conversation points as we continue our relationship and the war in Gaza comes to an end. I'm not surprised, nor am I angry that yesterday, as the United States attempted to both be supportive of and explain their embarrassment to President Zelensky and the machinations of being unable to provide continued monetary support, it was there that President Biden made it clear now the time is at hand. The innocent life taken in Gaza now must end. Okay, fine. 9 weeks, I get it. And politics is at hand. At hand. So we're back into the real world. And I will ask, having experienced being marginalized and ignored as being demoralized by last week's congressional hearings of 3 presidents, what then when the violence of the innocents is done?
Well, so what do you think comes next?
I don't know. If you read Tom Friedman today,
Mm-hmm.
who is responsible for rebuilding Gaza? To whom does it belong? In 2005, Israel walked away from it and it was just handed over to the Palestinians. Literally,
Mm-hmm.
they did not destroy anything. No one occupied it. We walked away and said, here, this is yours. So, was there an exchange of deeds? I don't know. So, it has to be reconstructed.
Is there a way to do that safely?
I don't know. You're talking to someone who begs to be engaged up to the limit of both my knowledge and my authority. And this is way above my pay grade and expertise. Look, it's tragic, but Hamas seems to have been successful at every single level of its goals, as I can imagine them. They have terrified the state of Israel. They calculated the perfect moment on the end of an 8-day festival, at the end of the high holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, last day possible. After 9 months of self-contained frustration, rage and disappointment about its own identity.
So,
Yep, they figured it out.
so a year from now, despite the damage and body count in Gaza, you think this will be remembered as a Hamas victory?
Perspective, who's asking the question? Will there have been direct negotiations that permit a relationship between Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States? Will there be a reconstituted Palestinian Authority that permits an actual possible two-state solution? Will there be a new government in Israel that has the vision to get past all this? I don't know. Besides the day after questions regarding Gaza, for me, the day after involves what will the next Israeli government be? Cannot be this government. And for me, that means not just Netanyahu, the whole government. And will Israel stop long enough to talk about the trauma of October 7th? It did not stop November 4th, 1995, when Rabin was assassinated, to talk about how did this happen? What have we done here to create the rage in which an Israeli would assassinate a prime minister based on the distorted teachings of religious nationalism? So, a year from now, who can imagine what a year from now means? We'll be talking about the elections, another president. I'll be having nightmares. And most tragically, how much will we have learned just from 1 week? What if we just take 1 week's worth of experiences? What does it mean that the president of Penn State could be pushed out, that Harvard's president required meetings and meetings, and she's safe, but has had to apologize? If I had told you 3 weeks ago that the fourth in line of Republican conservative leadership could have done that to Harvard, Penn, and MIT, nothing new did we learn about the presidents of three of the finest universities in the world being unable to answer a question that is framed in such a way, yes or no, that no honest, discerning engagement could take place.
So, okay. So say more about the hearings and Stefanik's question and the nature of free speech.
They were all prepared by the same law firm. All of them understood, since they were subpoenaed on the basis of anti-Semitism and the problems on campus that have escalated. No one could have imagined that Hamas could stimulate North American campus life the way they have. So you can't ask a, quote, wife-beating question, yes or no. It's a tautology. It is meant to be a verbal trap. Stefanik was not called on it, not by the chair, nor by any of those she questioned. And so we watched discourse disabled. And somehow that made the three presidents of three of the most important learning environments look pretty foolish. Could we have taken the word Stefanik used? People screaming genocide against the Jews. Well, they're not screaming genocide against the Jews. They're screaming Israel's committing genocide against the Palestinians. Should we stop and say to everyone in that room, could the members of the House of Representatives please tell us the origin of the word genocide? Could the presidents of the three universities explain how the word genocide has been taken hostage by the, quote, left on the campuses? That Palestinian student committees use the word genocide and Holocaust against Israel and the Jews on campus. And no one stops and says, excuse me, this is a place of learning. Free speech is one topic. The misuse of words, actually, we won't tolerate. When I taught at St. Cloud State University, I was put in this position. The then president said things and did things on behalf of those who protested on behalf of the Students for a Free Palestine, in which I was engaged as, quote, the angry Zionist professor. They took a picture of me at a public meeting, posted it on their Facebook. Don't take classes from. I talked to lawyers, I talked to them. We can't take it down. It was taken in a public space. The Students for a Free Palestine bought an Israeli flag and used it in the quad in a mock Palestinian funeral. I was warned, if you try to take down the Israeli flag, we will have you arrested. And told by the president, you're on your own. It's the marketplace of ideas. I won't help you. When the same Student for a Free Palestine misused a picture, a classic photograph of a little boy with his hands up and a Star of David with a gun pointed at him, classic, from the Warsaw Ghetto. And that is juxtaposed to photos of children in rubble from Gaza. And I said, no. Those pictures don't go together. That is historical revision. That is denial. I was told I could not require the posters to be taken down. And when I went to the panel and asked the professors to explain the posters and their failure to meet academic standards, police came and took me out.
Really?
And the president did not stop the police officers.
So go back to the pictures, because I think that's a good visual snapshot of the discourse right now. What is the problem of juxtaposing those images?
It goes to the origin and meaning of the word genocide. Genocide is the intentional elimination or destruction of an entire or part of a people using the apparatus of the state. The Armenian genocide was the first of the 20th century. Lemke, a Polish legal jurist, created the word genocide after Auschwitz. A child who is being harassed already with the Star of David and taken out by the Nazis who have removed this child from his family, destroyed his home, kidnapped him, incarcerated him in a ghetto. That child would later be gassed and incinerated at Auschwitz. That picture is a unique historical statement of genocide. Children in rubble because of a war, those two don't go together. Calling the children in rubble the product of Nazi exterminationist behavior literally meets the definition of anti Semitism. So, do we go to the university to learn the critical use of language? Those on campus who rightfully demand that we not misappropriate their culture and identity, that we listen carefully to the language they wish to be used, even down to pronouns.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was just thinking it's an instance of Jews are not perceived as an oppressed group.
So we are white, we are privileged, and now we're colonizing victimizer. Even we commit the genocide against others. So what Stefanik did was use the word against the president that had been, in fact, used against the Jews.
Strange bedfellows.
Oh, I have no desire to hold up a poster of Elise Stefanik as my Hanukkah savior. I think we are at a different crossroads with regard to universities, presidents, spokespersons, value systems. Nothing that those presidents articulated is new or surprising. Campuses have become a strange educational set of silos. Multidisciplinarity. We did a lot of work trying to create those programs. They're all silos. They are programs that feed themselves. So there are critical issues of racism that must be learned. I don't happen to agree that they are the only issues to be learned. I don't think all students should be required to take a course in anti-racism. They should be required to take a course on how to be engaged in the reality of pluralism in America. Racism may be America's original sin, maybe, but that is not the only sin for which all of us are culpable.
When you say maybe, what are you gesturing towards?
As a Jew, I don't like the idiom original sin because it's used as an idiom that assumes I also have the key to salvation.
Okay.
So I like when Christians help me understand their value regarding salvation and its link to Augustine's teaching of original sin. I like that. I learn from that. I don't like being told by a colleague in a faculty You must learn my discipline in order to get past the original sin of American history.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Mm-mm. No discipline is my salvation.
Hmm. You should put that on a t-shirt.
I think I almost did, but I retired in enough time that that too was not one of the things people disliked me for. Look, when I was told, and I understood it, what they're doing out there is the marketplace of ideas. No different than the three presidents who said, there's a context. Yes, there is a context. And so when I suggested to the then president of St. Cloud State, so excuse me, you don't want me to take down the Israeli flag being abused by the Students for a Free Palestine. Could I ask 6 students to dress up in drag and go outside with a pride flag? That isn't funny. How about 6 students dressed in blackface with a Confederate flag? Is that the marketplace of ideas? Would the 3 presidents have understood how to answer questions, even the way Stefanik framed them? Questions that had to do with the other marginalized communities on campus.
It's and I'm not the first person to comment on this, but it's one of the dynamics going on with this president's testimony, right? Is that we have gone through a season where we've been told and taught that speech can constitute violence. But now, when Jews are the object of that speech, we're given retreats back to the freedom of speech, and so it's, speech does not constitute violence so long as Jews are the object of it.
And let me say, I understand a young adult at a university campus whose color, whose racial community, whose sexual orientation, I understand they come with experiences of fear and isolation.
Sure.
Professors can exacerbate that. They exacerbate it when something happens in the classroom and the person who's afraid is ignored. The professor doesn't say, no, we are not doing that. We seem to know in primary school, even nursery school, you can't bite someone. I know you're 3, I know you're 4. You cannot pick up a block and hit the person. I know because I used to watch from my study at Temple Israel, the nursery school 4 floors below me. I could watch it. What happens when the same kids are in high school? Well, we stop in junior high telling them, stop being mean. And then when they move from high school to college, community college, state college, even the elite university, excuse me, sir, Ms., you're being obnoxious. Has nothing to do with free speech. I taught Bible every single semester. I required the students to use the Jewish Study Bible, Oxford Press, 2nd edition. You don't have to take my class. You want to use the Old Testament? God bless you. Not Tuesday and Thursday morning. And please, I understand you read it differently. And every semester, someone would say, "Excuse me, Dr. Edelheit, can I talk about the dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden?"
Oh,
No, because this class thinks the world is older than 6,000 years. Go to Bible study, be there. God bless you, not here. It's not, you're not free to tell me there are dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden. No. So if I can somehow find the courage to say, no dinosaurs, not in the Garden of Eden. No, that's not who the Leviathan is in the book of Job. And I'm not diminishing you. If I can figure out limits in my Bible class, we can't figure out you're misusing the word genocide.
So I hadn't expected you to take us here, but on Monday nights, I'm doing a class for my church and online on St. Athanasius's On the Incarnation, one of the first Christian theological texts. And in the book before that, Against the Gentiles, Athanasius refers to Eden. He has a line that's, he says, Moses is speaking figuratively about Eden because paradise is wherever one is free to contemplate and apprehend God. And I think it surprises people to see that in the Christian tradition, the church fathers do not read something like the creation story in the way that a lot of modern evangelicals read it. But maybe this is a little pause point where you can, how do Jews read something like Genesis 1 and 2, but read Scripture generally, because you all haven't had the reactions to the modernist era in the same way that American Western evangelicals have.
10 Jews in a room. 10 Jews in a room can only agree on what the 2 Jews outside the room should do. No, we have never, ever, ever read the Bible, quote, literally. Ever. It's not a part of how we know ourselves.
And it's important. And it's important that Jesus and Paul are included in that we.
No, there's no question about it. And probably the other disciples.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, the first 11 chapters of Genesis are mythopoeic, universal attempts at a literary framing of the mystery of our human origins and borrow from other universal literatures of many cultures. I don't believe that there is a way to have a text about the beginnings of life. Any people who are parents understand there is a physicality to their shared forming of a human being. But when the baby is birthed, and over those next many months and years, that baby, egg, sperm, becomes a human being. Is there no mystery to that?
Mm-hmm.
Of course there is. So, in the beginning, when God was creating, Bereshit bara et. I don't know any words that will help us engage the Big Bang and the how many billions of years, and also the life we have today. The gap between going back and being here is too great. I don't know how to get there. The Bible is a story among many. My granddaughter asked her grandma the other night, it was late. I had gone to sleep. Who were the first people? And grandma said Adam and Eve. Who were their parents? Your Zeta, your grandpa, is asleep. Let's ask him. Her father was upset. You didn't really say Adam and Eve. You don't believe that. What about science? To which I said, let's tell her all the stories. I want the pluralism of possibilities to which she can then add her own questions. Wow, a 5-year-old asking who were Adam and Eve's parents. Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Adam and Eve. No, those weren't the first human beings, but we don't have the names or description of the beings that went from. Yes, right. Evolution doesn't fit a story I'm going to tell you. You are getting ready to celebrate an extraordinary event, and it can only be told in a story. And the story probably has nothing to do with the history.
Well, and it's probably important for people to understand too. So for Jews, the story starts with Exodus, and then it's a remembering back. Yeah, and then it's a remembering backwards.
Correct.
In the same way that Christianity starts with the resurrection, and then trying to provide an account for, well, who is this person that God raised from the dead? And then it's a remembering backwards.
So we interpret. I like to use the words of my teacher, Paul Ricoeur. The scripture has permanent surplus meaning.
That's good.
Isn't that wonderful? How do you preach every week? Permanent surplus meaning. We can keep going back and reading critically, requiring each other to hear something different. We have been reading the text for fewer years than we've been hearing the text. So I don't know what Eden means. It's a place of beginnings, and we couldn't stay in the place because we had to make a choice. Here's a tree. It has fruit with moral knowledge on it. Don't eat of it. What does don't mean? I don't know what don't means. Oh, look at how sweet it is. Okay. In the construct of choices, we ate from moral knowledge. Would you prefer to have no moral knowledge? That makes us sociopaths. So that's the choice. And that choice was a sin. Excuse me, I just learned that. How would I have known of that had I not eaten? Okay, look, all of the stories require rereading, re-listening, asking more questions, and then thinking. That's interpretation.
Yep.
Interpretation starts with translation. It's in a language that no longer exists except as an ancient textual language. Israelis do not speak biblical Hebrew. Okay, then it was translated into Aramaic, and before that, Greek, and then after that, another Greek, and then Latin. Which is the correct language? Not English. All of it requires interpretation. You are the interpreter. You've studied, you've learned, you're called. So every week you are giving your community a chance to learn again from a text that was meant to be read aloud and heard.
Yeah.
Eden, shall we talk about Cain and Abel? I don't blame Cain, I blame God. The stories are essential for our learning how to be human.
Yeah.
So, Eden, I don't think I'd want to be there. Because as a human being, I can't imagine not having choices. So you want me to go back to paradise? No choices. No, I don't know what that means. I literally don't. Do I want a double shot of espresso or iced coffee? Choices. Here in Brazil, if you don't make iced coffee, no. You want iced coffee?
That's good.
Jesus, the Judean, certainly Paul, and I think the rest, all understood, Pharisaically, hypocrites notwithstanding, the text was meant to be studied, discussed, studied, and discussed more.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because in the lectionary for the third Sunday of Advent, the church typically reads Isaiah 61, which is also the text for Jesus's first sermon in Nazareth, from which Jesus omits the phrase about the vengeance of God. So you have Jesus in his inaugural sermon having a loose hand with the text.
Was it exegesis or eisegesis?
So, and I guess the Orthodox Christian answer would be that he's the author of this in the first place, and therefore he can do with it what he wants.
And I learned when I taught at Valparaiso University, a Lutheran liberal arts university, and I was invited not to speak, but to preach in the Chapel of the Resurrection. The chaplain of the chapel stormed out, believing that a Jew should never preach. Later in conversation, I said, I guess you wouldn't want Jesus to preach in this chapel.
Oh, that's bad optics on his part.
I've had such an interesting life. I blasphemed in the Chapel of Resurrection.
I had a professor once in seminary who was a hardcore Calvinist and would not. And so during Advent, there would be Christmas trees up in the chapel, and that so offended his Calvinist sensibilities, he would not stand for the hymns. He just sat there glumly, and I just always thought, like I get it, but you kind of look like an asshole. It's just bad commercial for Calvinism.
You have to hope that there's a seminary on high, interfaith faculty, and they're all pointing at each other and giggling as we continue to misunderstand the basics. It's a dark time of year. The pagans are running through the forest with torches. Okay? You get to choose. Create a religious story that takes form at this time of year, or join the pagans. Okay, I'll do my little syncretistic story. Hanukkah, you get Christmas. Okay. Neither of these stories is essential, but it is a stand against assimilation and syncretism. Okay. The story of origins is Passover and Easter. But you got to have something in December.
So maybe next time you can point out what is in the nativity story that Christians may miss or not appreciate. But we can let Advent be Advent.
Okay. I am grateful that I could share Hanukkah with you and those listening. I am grateful that you have helped me have a place that is safe in which I could experience the complexity of my Jewish identity at this point.
No, it's been very good for me personally, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback.
Good. Well, I will think of you as we light the last two lights, and I'm always.
Are there particular blessings that go with those last two lights?
Nope. The same blessings that we've used. The first is the commandment to kindle the Hanukkah lights, which is entirely rabbinic, does not appear anywhere in the Bible. And the second one, nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh, which you are only supposed to say after you've kindled the lights. So you look at them. They are public, as it were, and in recognition, you say, thank you, God, for what has happened in the past. And of course, since I've been lighting an extra menorah every night for still those in the dark, for the hostages, my prayer will have to be not just for that which has happened in the past, but for that which I don't yet know will happen in the future.
So you're obligated to look at the light.
You have to. And many interpret that to mean that the menorah should face outside. People should see the menorah. So my hope is that over the next two nights, wherever you are, I hope you will look for a menorah. Look for a light from a very small community that continues to sustain its prayerful hope of a destiny.
Well, thank you, Rabbi Joseph.
Thank you, Jason. God bless. See you next week.